Hey gladiators, walk the Kame Way. There is a moment in every man's life where the world stops clapping. No warning, no applause, no audience. Whose silence? And in that silence, something ugly shows up. Not your enemies, not your boss, not your ex, you. And that's when you learn the truth nobody wants to say out loud. People don't want you strong. They don't want you focused. They don't want you disciplined, because your discipline exposes their comfort. Your growth becomes their accusation. So they test you, not with violence, with doubt, with delay, with disrespect, dressed up as advice. They don't say stop. They say be realistic, and that word has killed more dreams than failure ever has. But here's the part they never show you. The man who keeps going anyway becomes unrecognizable to the people who doubted him. Not Luther, not Angrier, just unreachable. And that's where this story begins. A man who was not built for applause. Chapter 1. The day they started watching you fail, there is a specific kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels heavy, like the world is sitting back, arms crossed, waiting to see what you'll do when it gets hard. That's the day it started for him. Not when he lost everything, when people stopped believing he could win. It begins quietly. Messages stop coming first, then invitations. 10 respect. Then eye contact changes. You notice it in rooms before anyone says a word. You're no longer going through something. You're becoming something people bet against. And the strange part is, nobody announces it. There is no meeting where the world decides you are done. It just adjusts. People lower their expectations of you so they don't have to feel disappointed later. It's easier to write you off than to watch you struggle. And that's where most men break. Not from pain, from perception. Because once people treat you like you're finished, you start acting like it's true. You sit a little differently. You speak a little less. You stop trying to prove anything. And slowly, you start disappearing while still being alive. If you're still here, you already know you're not. Like most people who clicked on this, so don't treat this like entertainment. Subscribe to the Kame Way. Stay in this mindset. Stay in this discipline. Stay in a kind of thinking that doesn't disappear when life gets hard. Because the world is full of men who start strong and vanish the moment it stops feeling easy. Okay, let's keep going. But this man didn't disappear. He noticed something others miss. That the same people who doubt you are watching you closely, waiting for confirmation, waiting for the collapse, because your failure makes their worldview comfortable again. So every day becomes a quiet war, not against them, against the version of you that wants to agree with them. The version that says maybe they're right, the version that trades effort for peace. And in that war, something dangerous happens. You realize nobody is coming to save your name. No apology, no correction, no redemption from others. You either rebuild your life in silence, or you accept the story they wrote for you. And that's when he made a decision most men never make. Not to prove them wrong, but to stop needing them to be wrong in the first place. Chapter 2. When comfort starts to feel like death. There's a point where comfort stops feeling like rest and starts feeling like rot. You don't notice it at first because nothing is broken. You still wake up. You still go to work. You still love at the right moments. But something inside you stops moving forward. And anything that stops moving forward starts decaying. He noticed it in the small moments. The extra hour in bed that didn't feel like sleep anymore. The scrolling that didn't feel like entertainment anymore. The excuses that didn't even sound convincing in his own head. He wasn't resting. He was avoiding. And avoidance is dangerous because it feels peaceful while it slowly removes your identity. You stop doing hard things. Then you stop expecting hard things. Then you stop believing you can do hard things. And one day you wake up and realize you've been living below your potential for so long. It now feels normal. That's the trap, not failure. Familiarity. Because a man can survive failure, but he rarely survives comfort that lasts too long. So he did something most men delay forever. He looked at his life without negotiation. No, but I'm tired. No, but I deserve a break. No emotional bargaining. Push through. And truth doesn't whisper. It could. He saw it clearly. The body he wasn't building. The discipline he wasn't keeping. The money he kept postponing. The version of himself he kept promising next Monday. And for the first time, understood next Monday is where men go to die slowly. So he made a rule. Not motivation. Not inspiration. A rule. If it is hard, it is not optional. Because anything optional becomes negotiable. And anything negotiable becomes abandoned. That night didn't change his life, but it ended something inside him. The idea that he could think his way into greatness. From that point on, he would have to earn it in silence. Chapter 3. The room that reveals you. There is a room every man eventually enters. Not physica. Psychological. A room where nobody is impressed anymore. No new validation. No fresh motivation. No external pressure. Just you. And what you actually do when nothing is pushing you in that room. Excuses sound different. They don't sound convincing. They sound weak because there is no audience left to perform for. Only truth remains. He started noticing it during the quiet hours, early mornings when the world was still asleep, late nights when nobody would know if he skipped. Those were the real tests. Not Tajim, not the hope, not the conversations. The moments where nothing happens. If you quit, and that's where most men reveal themselves, because discipline is not built in chaos. It is built in silence, where no one is watching you choose between comfort and identity. He realized something uncomfortable. He didn't need more knowledge. He didn't need more motivation. He needed fewer negotiations with himself. Because every internal debate was costing him respect from the only person who mattered. So he started shrinking his life down to simple decisions. Do Italiano or don't, but stop lying in between. Because the in-between is where potential goes to rot. And slowly, something shifted. Not his circumstances. His identity. He stopped being a man trying to become disciplined and started being a disciplined man having a hard day. That difference is everything. Because once identity changes, actions stop feeling like effort. They start feeling like return to form, like remembering who you are when nobody is distracting you from it. But the real test wasn't this room. It was what happened when people started noticing the change, when silence started turning into attention again, and attention always comes with a price. Chapter 4. When they start rooting against you louder. At first, it comes back as curiosity. People who disappeared slowly return. Old messages, old faces, old energy. Not because they believe in you, because they want to see if it's real, if you're actually changing, or if you're just temporarily motivated like before. And this is where the pressure shifts. When you are failing, nobody cared. When you start improving, everyone starts watching. Not to support you, to evaluate you. He felt it immediately. The tone in conversations changed. The compliments weren't warm anymore. They were cautious, like people were trying to figure out how far you might actually go. Because if you go far enough, it makes them question their own path. And that is something most people avoid at all costs. They don't hate your success. They hate what your success exposes, that they could have chosen differently. That they still can, and that thought is uncomfortable. So they resist it by resisting you. So the jokes come back. The subtle doubt that don't get ahead of yourself. The reminders of who you used to be. Because it's easier to freeze you in your past than to update their understanding of you. And this is where many men make a fatal mistake. They try to be understood again. They try to explain the change. They try to get approval from the same rooms that ignored them when they were building themselves in silence. But he didn't. He learned something simple. You don't argue with perception. You outperform it. So he stopped talking about what he was doing. Stopped explaining the process. Stopped needing agreement and let results do what words never can. Create distance, because distance is the real evidence of change. Not speeches, not intentions, not promises, just how far you are from the version of you they remember. And the more distance he created, the more uncomfortable it became for them to watch, because now they had to choose, grow, or criticize. And most people choose the easier one. And if this is hitting you right now, don't just watch this and disappear. Subscribe to the Kame Way, not because it helps me, because if you're serious about changing your life, you need reminders that don't let you go back to sleep. Most men don't fail from lack of knowledge. They fail because nobody is reminding them who they said they were. Chapter 5. The price of becoming unrecognizable. There is a cost nobody mentions when you start changing your life. You don't just lose bad habits. You lose familiarity. You lose old conversation. You lose the version of you that made certain people comfortable. At first, it feels like victory. Less noise, less distraction, less emotional weight. But then you notice something colder. The distance starts to become permanent. People don't know where to place you anymore. He saw it in real time. Some people stopped calling. Not out of anger, out of mismatch, because your discipline forces them to feel their own lack of it. And most people don't stay around what makes them self-aware. Even admiration becomes complicated. Because admiration from afar still creates separation. They respect what you're doing, but they don't want to live it, so they keep you in a category. Not one of us, someone different. And that word sounds like praise. But it is also exile. Because once you are categorized as different, people stop relating to you. They stop confiding in you. They stop assuming you're reachable. And that's when loneliness shows up. Not the kind that comes from being alone. The kind that comes from becoming someone your past can no longer hold. You had to face it honestly. Growth is not only addition. It is subtraction. And what gets removed is not always weakness. Sometimes it's connection. Sometimes it's history. Sometimes it's comfort disguised as people. But he understood something deeper. If your growth costs you your old life, it is not a sign you are losing. It is a sign you are actually changing. Because real transformation does not fit inside old environments. So he stopped trying to be understood. Stopped trying to be emotionally safe for everyone and accepted something most men avoid forever. You cannot build a new life while begging the old one to approve of it. Chapter 6. The man they were waiting to see fall. They never stopped watching. Even when they acted like they moved on. Even when they smiled. Even when they changed the subject. Some part of them stayed behind. Waiting for proof that you would go back to who you were. Because if you did, everything made sense again. Nothing had to change in them, and that's the hidden truth. People don't always root against you loudly. Sometimes they root against your change silently, because your discipline disrupts their comfort. Your progress disrupts their excuses. Your consistency disrupts their identity. He finally understood what was really happening. It was never about him being weak before. It was about what his weakness allowed others to avoid thinking about. And now that he was rising, they had to face it. So the tension built quietly. Every success became a question in other people's minds. Every improvement became a reflection they didn't ask for. And every step forward made the old version of him harder to defend. But the real shift wasn't in them. It was in him, because he stopped living like he was under observation. He stopped performing. He stopped explaining. He stopped seeking permission from ghosts of old opinions. And in that silence, something powerful formed. Not confidence, not ego. Certainty. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that doesn't need agreement. The kind that doesn't care who understands. Because he realized something most men never fully accept. You don't win by being supported. You win by becoming undeniable. And undeniable men don't argue with doubt. They outlast it. So when they finally saw him again, he wasn't trying to be seen. He was simply living in a way that made ignoring him impossible. And that changed everything.